3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Mission Control for another feature-focused video. In this video, we're going to talk about the options for a chase. Set options for a chase, press the options hard key or options from the soft keys, and then press the select button of the playback to be edited. The options window will open, allowing you to set a wide range of options for how the playback will work, including times. This can also be set using the soft keys. The options are split into different categories using tabs down the left-hand side. Click on the I button for a help window for each setting. The options are covered in this video are for a chase, for normal queues, and for queue lists. The options are different and are described in the queue video and the queue list video in the description below. Here, I have version 14 of Titan on the Titan Go interface. And as you see, I've got some chases here. So if I wanted to set the options for these, I can click the options hard key here or options from the soft keys. And if I wanted to select more than one at a time, I can simply drag select them all, and I can have all four of them at the same time, or I can edit just one. You see the window that comes up down our left-hand side of it. We've got the different categories. These categories are always on our soft keys. It's the same no matter which one you click. So in the playbacks category, we've got blind. Sets the individual playback to blind mode. The playback will then only output to the visualizer and not to the stage. This would be very useful if you need to program and test a queue during a live show. Crossfade HTTP, if on, makes HTTP dimmer in Titan. Channels in this queue override other HTTP channels, obeying their priority settings. So if we had a playback with our fixtures already at 100% and we had one at 50%, with the crossfade HTTP turned on, when we brought the one at 50%, our lights would fade down to 50% to crossfade the HTTP. Queue links disabled. If set, all links between queues will be ignored when a queue is fired. This will basically make it so it delinks your chase as need be. Next we have linking. This sets the linking of the queues in this playback. Link according to steps. This will follow the linking set in each queue. Always link steps regardless of the other settings. Each step will always link following the previous. Never link steps, ignores links. So let's take a look at some of those. So obviously I turned on blind. It would work here. Same thing with crossfade HTTP. And the queue links disabled. The next one we have is linking. Link according to steps. So if we had to set different linking in each step of our chase, it would just go to those. Always link steps will always link them, or never link steps will never link them. So if I change it to never link and exit out of here, now when I fire this chase, I have to hit go for each step to step in. I would set it back to always link. Now when I refire the chase, it automatically steps through each step of my chase. And then link according to steps. If I had to change it to my individual steps through the edit times menu, it would follow that instead. Loop action sets what will happen at the end of the chase. Stop on final queue. The chase will stop advancing once it reaches the last queue. Loop, which is the default. Chase will go back to the first queue after the last. Play order defines the order the queues play back in a chase. Forward, the chase will start at the first queue and move to the last step. Backwards, the chase will start on the last step and move to the first step. Bounce, the chase will change direction at each end. Random, the chase steps will execute in a random order. So let's take a look at that. So if we go ahead and set our loop action to loop like it does as we saw earlier, if we set it set to stop on final queue, and we exit our options, now when we bring it up, so it goes to 1, 2, 3, and then on 4, it stops. And if we set it back to loop, obviously it will loop again. Here, if we change our play order from forwards to backwards, and we close it, we can see that our chase starts on 4, goes to 3, 2, 1, and loops back around to 4. If we set it to bounce, we see it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. If we set it to random, it will randomize those steps. It went 1, 3, 1, 2, 4. So it just randomizes them up. Lastly, in our playback section, we have priority. It allows you to figure out how playbacks will behave if you turn on two playbacks controlling the same fixture. If you have playback running, when you change the priority, you have to turn it off and then refire it for the priority to be put in the stack. Run a startup sets the playback to run when the console powers on, actually show file loads. These can be disabled by the auto run startup playbacks option in user settings. This is turned on by default, so if you had a playback that you wanted to run when the console loaded the show file, you could turn this on for that particular playback and it would fire at show loading. So let's take a quick look at priority. If we bring up our options menu again, we can set our priority to be either low, normal, high, programmer, or very high. This means that this playback would override any playbacks that have a priority set lower than it, and even over the programmer if set to very high. So if we have this one set to high, and then we fired this playback, and we fired this one, we can see that this playback has control of everything because it has a higher priority. Continuing on with our options, under the handle tab, we have handle paging. Allows you to lock the playback on a handle so it always appears on that handle no matter which page is selected. This is useful if you have some general playbacks you want on every page without having to copy the playback onto each page. The options are unlocked. Playback will change with pages as normal. Transparent lock. The playback will appear on all pages when the handle is unprogrammed. Locked. This playback will appear on all pages. Playbacks programmed on this handle on other pages will not be accessible. Key profile. This sets the key profile individually for this playback. Global sets the key profile back to global settings for playbacks. So let's take a quick look at that. So if we were to set our playback here to locked, now we'll see that if I change pages, that chase stays on there no matter what. If I was to change our options on this one here, and set the transparent lock instead, we see that when we go to page 1, it switches to this playback. When I go to 2, it reappears here. If I go to page 3, you see it switches to this one because I had something else programmed there. But when I go to 4, 5, 6, it stays that same chase. Lastly, we have key profile. Here, we can either add a new one, make a new key profile, or select from ones that are already created to change our keys for this chase. Under the Times tab, we have Flash Fade In. The time used to flash fade in this playback. You must use the timed key profile for this to work. Same thing, but for fade out. Speed sets the default speed for this playback in BPM. This can be overridden by a rate or BPM master. Speed multiplier sets the multiplier, which is the speed master for the chase step speed. And X fade lets you specify the fade between cues. 0% as they snap, 100% fades for the full period. So let's take a quick look at that. Back here on our console, we can see that on this one we have our flash fade in and flash fade out times, our speed. So we can change the default speed from 60 to, we'll say 20. And we'll set our speed multiplier to 2x and our crossfade to 50. So now we'll see when we fire this chase, we get a 20 BPM on it. But since it's 2x, it's going to actually be running at 40 BPM. And our crossfade is 50. So that means that our lights spend 50% of the time crossfading into the new state and 50% of the time waiting for it to go to the next step. If we were to change it to 0, we see that it changes as quickly as possible and spends the rest of the time waiting in the change. If we were to change it back to 100%, we see that it moves smoothly between each step without any pausing, because it spends 100% of the time making the change. Under the Effects tab, we have Effect Speed Multiplier, a multiplier for the speed of the effects in this playback. applied in addition to BPM masters and other modifiers. Shape behavior controls the behavior of keyframe shapes in this playback. Global, the global setting from user settings. Overlay, the shape continues to run over changes to attributes. LTP, if attributes are changed, the shape will stop running on those attributes. Size source lets you allocate a speed master to this playback. Speed source lets you allocate a rate and BPM master to this playback. For a spec speed multiplier and shape behavior, please see our options Q video, but let's take a look at the rest of this. See here, if we had a shape in our chase, we could set its size through a size master here. If we wanted to have our chase listen to a BPM master, we could select it here, and such as we could select this BPM master here, and it would listen to BPM master 1. So now if we record one real quick, we can see if I fire my chase now and tap my tempo that it listens to the BPM here. Under the Release tab, we have Release Mask. Lets you specify attributes will release to the state they're in from a previously fired playback. When this playback gets killed, you lower the fader to 0. You can also use Attribute Bake buttons to set the mask. The mask can be set to either global or local. Local means you make individual mask settings for this playback. Global uses the global release mask, which is set under the release menu. Press release. Release time sets the release fade time for this playback. Enter a blank time to return to global. Global release time is set in the user settings, which is 2 seconds by default. Q release, after each step, features no longer affected are released. So let's take a look at that. Here, I've got a couple of chase and a couple of playbacks added. So for release mask, we can see here that I've got this playback has got some gobos in it, whereas this chase does not, and has only red color instead of red and blue. So if I had this playback running and I fired this chase, I see the gobo goes away and the features move. When I drop this playback, we can see that they stop moving, but the position and the gobo being open remain. If I was to option this playback here and set its release mask instead of global to local and included pan and tilt and gobo, and we'll set a release time of 1 second, so we'll do 1 second fade for us, and then we'll go ahead and close this out. So now, when I fire this chase, we see that it runs, and when I bring it back to 0, it goes back to the position and gobo that the fixtures were in before. To show Q release, we'll show this chase here. We see we've got our fixtures chasing like this, pointing down. Note that the first step has the LOIs pointing down, and the other ones are recorded in channel mode with just the intensity. So as to change my option here to Q release, you'll note that when we fire this chase now, the first step comes as expected, and our live fixtures release since they were no longer affected. And it comes back to step 1, they point down again. That's how you can get it to release certain attributes or entire fixtures if needed in between chase steps. So that has been options for chases in version 14 of Titan. I hope you learned something. Please subscribe and join us next time. Thanks. Bye.
Wheel stop.
Roger, wheel stop, Discovery. Welcome back. A great ending to the new beginning.